Hello everyone, this is the Archaic Revival Podcast, recording to you from my camper van, which I currently temporarily reside in. And yes, I'm working currently. But enough of me. This is exactly why I'm doing this. Is to create somewhat of a nameless persona to address this podcast. And where I'm really coming from is not an absence of my own experience, but just the absence of where I'm from. And this idea originally stems from, well, it's the Archaic Revival Podcast. So it stems from the work of Terence McKenna, which coins this term of archaic revivification. And where that comes down to is where we were in archaic times. Simple enough, isn't it? Well, not so simple. It certainly wasn't simple for me when I first encountered this idea about 4 years ago. I'd say 3 years ago. Before I listened to these ideas of the Archaic Revival, which Terence McKenna has brought forth. He's actually written a book about it, which I have read but one chapter of, so make of that what you want. So the whole idea, from listening to countless hours of his talks on various different subjects, is that the Archaic Revival is a central mode in which we lived in archaic times. So that mode is somewhere between what we are as an animal and what we are today as humans. Now, I reckon much more leaning towards the animal side, if you know what I mean. So his theory proposes that of our proto-hominid beings encountering the psilocybin mushroom in whatever form of either the cubensis species or any of that variation. I'm not too well versed. Excuse me. So that engaged many advances, but seeing as I will not propagate his thoughts directly, I'll leave it up to you. I put his name in the title with the intent of having people to sit down and listen to him. So what this means in turn, the Archaic Revival, to me anyways, and what I've learned from it is there is something about it that sparked this interest in me of the notion of ideas. And you know, people in this world, all over the world, from all places, times, advancements, anything you'd like to address about this notion is, to my manner, a hoax. And not because ideas are not ideas, but the notion of an idea is, you know, you always hear people say, well, they had the idea of speaking or singing or anything you can think about. Really, the idea of fire. Although, no, I'm not going to propagate on this, because to my mind, you know what I mean. And if you don't, just look around you at what you have in front of you and realize that that is an idea. Someone had that idea. This comes down, for me personally, then, to not ideas, but that the first notion that we had out of being someone who is a monkey to someone closely resembling who we are today. Now yet again, the Archaic Revival. So that is the stage in which we find ourselves. Now, all of this was the idea. The idea became nothing more but experience. Because even he speaks, Terence McKenna, about these monkeys left the treetops and went on to grasslands, and there is where they had to expand their diet and find these mushrooms on the dung of the cattle, where these mushrooms prefer to grow. And that was the idea. The idea was to walk up to something, pick it up, eat it. Now, in the psychedelic culture, shall I say, although if you know Terence McKenna, you'll think otherwise, but there's this notion of the psychedelic experience, which says everything you need to know about what the psychedelic has to offer, and that is experience. Now, if you go back to even the first ideas, now let's not assume that this is correct, that the mushroom did spark consciousness with the proto-hominid primates. It was experience all along, from the very beginning of existence. No, I know, I sound crazy, but it's a fairly simple idea, I believe, and it regards the notion of experience, but it's, in its essence, the ultimate procurer of heading towards the Archaic Revival. For experience sparks everything.
5 minutes of the way
you get cold, that's an experience. You make a fire. You advance that through the notion that you experience at the wood. It's an obvious notion, let's say. But is it really that obvious without dragging anyone into this? I would not like to imagine to myself that all of my ideas pertain themselves to someone else in correlation, even if it's an opinion. I must have experienced it somewhere, but I'm speaking about the experience itself. The experience itself has become the coup de grace of what we do in this life and how we do it. Sometimes we don't learn, but when you can have ideas. Now, what happened there in my mind right now, I know, contradiction, but it to me is an example of the experience. Now, what happened right there, that long ass pause, I honestly didn't know what to say, but I tried to experience my thoughts and not guide them, so to speak. So I tried to have an idea, albeit not my own, but experience comes with involvement. And what happened was, there was once a talk I listened to about Ram Das, Dr. Richard Alpert, and he said his house was falling apart, cars needed to be paid, rent was due, everything was going wrong. And at the moment he was living with Dr. Timothy Leary, and he would come up to him and say, "Timothy, we need a plan." You see, I just fucked it up. Actually, I didn't. And then he would say that to Timothy, and Timothy would say, "Listen, we don't need a plan, we need a solution." And that was the experience which I tried to come to when I was addressing experience and what it means. Actually, I was talking about ideas at that time. So there's this kind of venturing in which I found myself in relation to that notion of the Archaic Revival. And it really became somewhat of a singular notion, and the understanding of it becomes clearer as I move on through time. Because I now, looking on it, see that Terence McKenna was not arguing this and here, that we should have lived like those hominid primates, but the Archaic Revival is, in a sense, archaic, which is something that was been lost to be refound again. And I can look back on many, many people. I mean, I listened to John, jeez, what was his name? I don't know, but it wasn't John Anthony West. Where did that name even come from? It wasn't. Now, this will bring in yet again, my mind wanders, and now we'll come down to direct communication amongst individuals. Direct communication amongst individuals, and I guess it shall not be spoken. This long pause is excruciating, I know. But direct communication is solitary.